It's 10 years ago today that the body of a 25-year-old woman was found in Ipswich. Officers at the time really had no idea the discovery of Gemma Adams would be the start of the biggest investigation in Suffolk Police's history and would end in the capture of a serial killer, Steve Wright.
Well, a decade on, there are still fears for vulnerable women in Ipswich. Sky News has discovered that despite assurances from the police, there are still sex workers on the streets of the town. Siobhan Robbins reports.
December 2006, the bodies of 5 women were discovered in Ipswich. All were prostitutes, all murdered by their client, Steve Wright. Others selling sex at the time told me they're lucky to be alive.
He gave me £50, took me to a house I told him to take me to, told him to wait there, and of course I didn't come back out of this house.
What do you think would have happened to you if you'd got in the car?
I would have been murdered like the rest of them, most definitely.
It took hundreds of officers almost 8 weeks to catch the serial killer.
He has been arrested on suspicion of murdering all 5 women: Gemma Adams, Tanya Nicol, Annalea Alderton, Paula Clennell and Annette Nichols.
But the murders sparked a crackdown on street prostitution in Ipswich. Simon Alders now runs a rehab centre for addicts and was part of the original team. His focus was getting women off drugs and off the streets.
I'd like to introduce you to Alan Caton, who's ex-detective inspector.
Hi, Alan. At the same time, Alan Caton led the police in cracking down on curb crawlers, arresting more than 100 men in 2 years.
I would say it's been an overwhelming success. In fact, since 2008, there have been no reports of women working on the street as street prostitutes, and there have been no reports or men arrested for curb crawling offences.
What impact then do you think your strategy has had on street prostitution in Ipswich?
It's removed street prostitution from Ipswich.
That night in Ipswich, we drove around the old red light district to see if prostitution had really been eradicated. Certainly the large gangs of girls from 2006 were nowhere to be seen. But we'd heard reports that street sex workers had never properly disappeared. The next morning, I met Donna. She knew Steve Wright and his victims after selling sex here in 2006. She said women today are no safer.
The girl who I spoke to, who worked only last night, this is where she worked.
So a girl you spoke to last night said she was working here,
yes,
and getting business,
yes,
in Ipswich,
yes,
in the place where we're told that there is no street prostitution.
Yes.
And as far as you're concerned, how many girls do you think approximately are working?
I've seen 4.
Do you think it's safer for prostitutes working now, though?
Definitely not.
Do you think that someone like Steve Wright could happen again?
I think that they are more at risk now.
If Donna was right, the only change is that street sex workers have moved a few yards up the road since 2006.
So we decided tonight to come and have a look on the streets where we've been told that prostitutes are working here in Ipswich, up ahead of me there, and after about 20 minutes we saw a girl standing on a junction. She was standing there for a fair while. We drove down past her, we pulled over and she approached the car. Now we then drove off, but we drove round again, pulled over again, and once again she approached the car.
In the areas we saw evidence of street prostitution and curb crawlers, we didn't see any marked police cars. But the force here says it's committed to dealing with the issue and protecting the women involved. 152 UK sex workers have been murdered since 1990, and police say pushing prostitutes off the streets doesn't automatically make them safer.
We have no idea the scale on the internet. The law as it stands in the UK at the moment, if women operate together, it's a brothel, therefore it's illegal. So women are, through the law of the UK, they have to operate alone, but clearly, depending on what your arrangements are, you're perhaps less safe.
10 years after 5 women were murdered in Suffolk, street prostitutes still work in Ipswich. And why women are now meant to be protected, not prosecuted. The fear of arrest means many still don't report violent attacks or rape. And that leaves them vulnerable to predators like Steve Wright in the future. Siobhan Robbins, Sky News, Ipswich.